Morning, Chavra. Today is the 21st day of Aleph Cheshvan. Beautiful Wednesday morning. We're on page 64 in the Chayinu booklets. Where's Larry? You left, Larry? Larry left, okay. In today's lesson, will is likened to a pillar which connects ceiling to floor, thus connecting the highest to the lowest. Similarly, the divine will inherited in mitzvahs serves as a conduit to channel the highest godly pleasure with man's deeds, the lowest. When I say godly, I mean God's pleasure. Oh, Larry, you still here? The Alter Rebbe now goes on to explain that in addition to this function of mitzvahs as garments for the soul, they also serve to unite the sublime spiritual level of Keser with the physical objects that are used to perform the mitzvahs. As such, they resemble pillars that connect the highest part of the house to the lowest. The supernal will is termed and referred to by the Kabbalists as Keser Elyon, the supreme crown. In it, there are 620 pillars of light, the 620 being the numerical equivalent of the Hebrew word Keser. By way of an analogy, when you take a regular house, a large brick home, there are pillars that stand on the ground, and the top, so the bottom is on the ground, obviously, and the top is touching the ceiling, oftentimes holding up the ceiling, thereby connecting the lowest part of the house with the highest. So too, metaphorically speaking, of course, the supernal Keser transcends the level of Chachma, which is which is the highest, first and highest form of the inner spheres. The word Keser is related to Keser's capital, for shehu machtir makif al hamoichin shabadosh. When you wear a crown, it goes around your head, it encompasses around the brain, which is inside the head. What's inside your head? Your brain, which represents your knowledge, well, it is your knowledge, your wisdom, and understanding is in your brain. Faculties of Chachma Bin and Das. This supernal will is vested in the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah and the 7 midrabanon, rubam kekulam heim mitzvahs maisius. Most of them are physical action-based mitzvahs that we have to do in this world with physical objects. And even the commandments that have to do with speech. You say a blessing, or when you say do a certain mitzvah with speech, they also take up physical action because you're moving your lips, your tongue, your mouth. We've accepted a halachic principle that the movement of one's lips and speech is regarded as an act. And even the mitzvahs that relate to thought and the heart, when you're very excited, your heart's beating rapidly. Your mind is working extra hard when you're thinking, when you have extra kavanah. The commandments were not given in heaven. They were given to us physical beings, that every time we do a mitzvah, we're utilizing and using physical objects. And even if it's not the object itself, but it's our lips, it's our mouth, it's our voice. My throat's hurting me today. You can hear it, right? Because you're using it. At least I'm trying to. Person has the choice to turn his heart to good and so on. You know, you're not grabbing hold of your heart and shaking it like an esrog, but you have the chance to move your heart towards the good or the opposite. The soul without a body, however, does not need to be commanded about this. It follows like a malach, like an angel. So the mitzvahs, metaphorically speaking, are like the pillars that connect from the lowest level to the highest level. They connect from this world all the way up to the spiritual realms. So the pillars are like hollow that encompass and garb the garments of the mitzvahs, man's neshama or ruach or nefesh when he fulfills the mitzvahs. Like a tunnel, they can go straight up. By way of these pillars of the mitzvahs is nefesh, ruach, and neshama ascend to the highest levels to be bound up in the bond of life. Be bound up in the bond of life with God. That is Perush. And what's the goal? To be bound up and vested in the light of Keser, which is the will of Hashem. And how do we reach that high level? By means of this garment. These mitzvahs that we do. We are able to behold the pleasantness of Hashem and the pleasurable thirst which transcends the level of Keser and ultimately transcends all the worlds. Even though we explained in other places that the mitzvahs are the pnimiyas, the innermost element of the supernal will, and here we're explaining that they're an external aspect of Keser. How could that be? It's a little complicated to explain. Sometimes it's the internal aspect, sometimes it's the external aspect. Okay, but nevertheless, there are multiple levels, different levels. So in one place we might be talking about the internal level, the previous level, and one time we might be talking about the external level. Okay. In case there are numerous faces and there are numerous internal levels and external levels. Okay. So the Alter Rebbe above called the commandments the 620 pillars of life. How does this agree with the previous statement that the 613 garments of the mitzvahs correspond to the 613 soul powers? Is it 613 or is it 620? And not just that, but is it corresponding to the garments, the soul powers, or the pillars of light of Keser? Excuse me. V'hinei Zayin mitzvahs Rabbanon. So let's talk about the 7 mitzvahs of the Rabbanon that are added on to the 613 to make a grand total of 620. So he says that the 7 mitzvahs of Rabbanon Einoin nechshavis mitzvahs b'fnei atzman shaharei kvar nemar lo yisayisiv. So they're not to be counted as mitzvahs in themselves, but it's said you shall not add to the commandments. Rather, they derive and issue from the mitzvahs of the Torah that are included in them, in the sum of 613. Which garb the 613 aspects and powers in the nefesh, ruach, and neshama of man. So that's it for today. We literally continue the same subject tomorrow. But anyway, the takeaway for today is your performance of a mitzvah is your staircase to God, quote unquote. Particularly a connection with the lofty levels of godliness known as the ratzah in the will of Hashem. So all in all, whether it's 620, whether it's 613, the next mitzvah that you have an opportunity to do it. And that is your connection today, Bishtar. Have a wonderful day, Chabra.